Welcome to another episode of the brand called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and experienced professional from the world of human resources, Dr. Deanna Kimbrel-Hopkins from Rochester, New York, USA. Dr. D, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Dr. D is the founder and CEO of Kimbrel Management Consulting. She's also an author of a book titled Inclusive Leadership Essentials. So, my first question for you, what early experiences shaped your passion for leadership, equity, and inclusion?
Yeah, what a great question. And it really is surrounded by my experiences early on with a lack of inclusion, a lack of equity. So many years ago, let's say 20 years ago, we really didn't have those same expectations, the same language, and the same words, but we still had those same feelings.
Hmm.
So, just not feeling, welcomed in organizations made me want to be that person, to have that voice for those that are like me or those who feel as though they don't have a voice, they don't belong in an organization or there isn't a place for them. So
Hmm.
being that advocate as I, got older and started to learn a little bit more, become a more seasoned professional, and also through my doctoral journey of gaining my doctorate, learning a lot more about organizational culture, about what leadership could be, and wanting to be that person to implement that within
Hmm.
organization.
Thank you. And how did your career path evolve from HR strategy into transformational leadership and DEI consulting?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, again, around the time when I've completed my doctoral degree, stepping more into those builder roles in organizations. So building out those structures beyond just regular HR, but really engaging people, understanding leaders, um, and being able to effect change in that way.
Hmm.
So it really is with education, with experience, but also with passion and curiosity on
Hmm.
how to make organizations better.
Hmm. Well said. Dr. D, tell me, how has the role of HR leaders changed in the age of diversity, technology, and remote work?
Yeah, again, great question. And I think it really has evolved. Traditionally, we see HR just as the people that are doing task related things such as benefits, such as timekeeping, such as hiring. But now we see that role become more strategic and more leadership focused and
Right.
across an organization and being a
Right.
part of every facet in an organization. So it really is the HR leader being able to understand people, hear voices, and then create a culture, and
Hmm.
curate that culture. So I think that is the role of the HR leader now is what
Hmm.
what is the environment, how are people experiencing it, and how do you make it better for those who may be disenfranchised, marginalized, so those experiences, and having tools and resources for everyone. So I
Hmm.
think it is a much more strategic, multifaceted role that it isn't just about the processes of people, but the experiences and engaging people as well.
Well said. When I started working in 1979 after business school, HR was really, there was no concept of HR. It was payroll, it was personnel management, and industrial relations. But today it's a
Yeah.
C-suite role. Thank you for telling me about this. And tell me, based on all the work that you do, what are some of the biggest misconceptions organizations still have about diversity, equity, and inclusion as a business strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think some organizations still see, and we see it in our US government, there are a lot of narratives going around DEI, and it kind of has become like almost a bad word. Like, we don't want to
Mm,
have DEI. So there's several misconceptions going on. But it really is a tool to enhance any organization to make them more innovative, to create a space where people want to come to, where people are engaged.
mm,
And some people are just looking at DEI, but not about the diversity that is important in the organization. The differences not just in race and gender, but when we think about mindsets, we think about experiences, we think about neurodiversity. So there's several different diversities, and they
Hmm.
really impact all of us, no matter
Hmm.
what our backgrounds are. And then the inclusion piece, making sure that people are included in the organization, and it isn't just an environment that is geared to one group of people. And then I think the real meat in it is the equity. So how do we understand differences, but not only understand them, but implement the tools and resources so
Hmm.
that people can experience and have the same success in an organization. So I think people are just looking at it as a buzzword, but when in actuality, it is something to build the organization and build the most important asset in the organization, and that's
Hmm.
going to be the people. So how
Correct.
do we make sure that we are considering the people, the differences that they bring, and allowing that to make the organization be better?
Great response. And what indicators reveal that an organization's inclusion strategy is truly working?
Yeah, I think you can see that in the people. When the people are happy to be there, they're happy to share their experiences. They're happy and they are able to take risks. You don't see people just that think take mindset. People are have a growth mindset. Teams are strong, leaders are strong, and you'll see that in the organization. And it is just the way that people are living in the organization and thriving in the organization. Is it a culture of where people are just surviving to get to the end of the day, the end of the
Hmm.
week, or are people thriving to really, share and grow the organization?
Hmm. And what or how can HR leaders maintain credibility while challenging inequitable practices within their own company?
Yeah, and I think that's a big one because and for myself working in many organizations and being that person to kind of bring these inequities to the forefront, to
Hmm.
bring these not so good experiences that people may be having to the forefront can be very challenging. And that's something that senior leaders may not want to hear, or they may take it personal, or they may not, because they can't see it, they may not trust it. So I think that it is a very hard job to be credible, but it is also very important to be authentic in that. Most people are concerned with, oh, I don't want to lose my job, I don't want to be seen as a troublemaker, but you have to have courage in a professional way in order
Hmm.
to move these things forward. So
Hmm.
being authentic, making sure that you have a stance and that you're staying true to that, and you're
Hmm.
also getting things moved forward using the voice that you do have in that organization. So
Hmm.
for me, I would say credibility is the authenticity of that HR leader.
Well said. What advice would you give to emerging HR professionals who aspire to integrate DEI into their leadership identity?
Yeah, I think it really is understanding yourself first. So doing some self-reflective work, doing self-leadership to understand who you are as a leader. And
Hmm.
when you know that, that's something that you can remain true to, as these challenges come up around DEI, around HR, around people in the organization. So really understanding and building that strong, solid foundation of you as a leader. What is your leadership brand? What is your leadership
Hmm.
identity? What do you believe in? What don't you believe in? So having those clear ideas and staying true to those, because it's going to be turbulence as you
Hmm.
go through an
Hmm.
organization, as you're learning an organization, and as you are looking to implement these structures, which can be very, very hard,
Right.
especially in American culture, just based on the way that the society was built. So it can be very hard, but having a true leadership identity and to who you are as a leader, what you bring to the organization, is going to be the very most important and first step.
Hmm. One more question, and then I'll want to move to your book. Can you share a success story where HR and DEI collaboration produced a measurable cultural impact?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think anytime that DEI is able to integrate into HR to change processes and systems is where we would see the success. So when we are, of course, educating and encouraging people to change minds, reduce biases, that's great. But when we're actually able to change the processes that marginalize people, that keep people in equitable situations within an organization systematically, then we are able to really have success there. So I've been a part of a lot of organizations that have been able to do that. But in particularly when I worked for the local government and implementing local laws that kind of reduce and mitigate the impact of marginalization, of inequities on people. So those are some of the things that not only work for people within an organization, but people within a community. So being able to implement those things to last beyond your tenure in an organization and those different things. So that's what success looks like to me.
Thank you. Let's talk about your book, Inclusive Workplace Culture. Dr. D, what inspired you to write your book, and how has the book's reception influenced your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So what inspired me to write the book is because we have done a lot of talking around DEI, what it is, what it isn't, why it is important. But what's always missing is that tangible piece of implementation. So how do we make it real in our organization? What are the first steps? And that's what the book does. It is a practical guide on how to implement DEI strategy through a leadership lens. And I believe that leaders are the key to effectively implementing DEI because those are the people that will change the culture. Those are the people that are experiencing the people or creating those environments. And those are the people that's responsible, not just the person with the DEI title, but everyone that are considered leaders formally and informally in that organization. So that book is that practical guide on how to.
And what does a genuinely inclusive workplace look and feel like on an ordinary day?
Yeah, I mean, it should feel like people collaborating, communicating, building relationships, coming up with new ideas, willing to take risks, and people just wanting to be there. Again, thriving and not surviving like, oh, I have to go to work today is, oh, I have work today,
Okay.
that kind of
Yeah,
attitude.
absolutely. I like the way you presented both this scenario. Thank you. Uh, how can organizations move from performative diversity statements to authentic inclusion practices? And why I'm asking you this is I've often spoken to CEOs about DEI, and a comment that is often made to me is, well, we have a policy and now the HR has to implement it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the key is implementation, but do they have the tools, resources, and the buy-in to implement it, right? So a lot of times we have that policy, but it isn't being enforced. So what good is a policy? What good is a local law? What good is, anything if it's not being enforced? So actually having the tools and resources to enforce things. And a lot of times in organizations, I would work with leaders to create these policies, but they didn't have the tools and resources. So for instance, for people that may be deaf or hard of hearing, they have a policy to support them, but not the tools to support them. So making sure that what you say is aligning to what you can and will do.
What are some early warning signs that workplace culture may be excluding certain groups?
I think the early warning signs, and one thing that I've always seen in organization is about holidays, right? So in some organizations, people have certain holidays off. You have certain times off. Most regularly here in the United States, it's Christmas, it's Thanksgiving, but not about all of the other holidays people may have because people have different religions. So there's Ramadan, there's Jewish holidays, there's all these different things, Diwali, that may come up, but not really considered. So people would have to take personal time, whereas for other holidays, people just get that time off. So an organization being aware of those differences in religion and holidays and allowing employees to be flexible is where we would see more inclusion. Instead of forcing everyone into this, this calendar that may not fit for a lot of people.
Absolutely. And therefore, a follow-up question for you would be, how should organizations design inclusive onboarding and learning experiences for diverse employees?
I think the most important way to develop inclusion, especially as people are coming into an organization, is listening. So
Mm,
listening, understanding things about their background beyond the basics. We know that that HR takes our basic demographics, but what do we need to know beyond those demographics, beyond biology? What are people identifying as? Are they a single parent? Are they a caretaker? Are they so are they transitioning in any way? So understanding and really listening to the employees is the best way
mm,
to onboard them, and
mm,
also the best way to develop experiences for them as well.
mm. But over the years, have you started to feel a shift in trends from what it used to be, say, 10, 15 years ago to what it is today?
Yeah, well, we see a back and forth. We see 2020 people really starting to rally around DEI and differences and implementing those in organizations. By 2023, we see that start to roll back. We
Mm,
continue to see that roll back, but what it does is reveal to us who is genuine
mm,
around DEI in an organization and who is not,
mm,
right? So we see organizations still being authentic around DEI, implementing those best practices. And we see some that have dropped them, right? And we see some who, when we think about organizations like Target and things of that nature that have kind of rolled back those things as a matter of risk. And then we see other organizations continuing, regardless of what that risk may be, to support those differences in their organization in a major
mm,
way. So,
mm,
what has been good is that we've got to see organizations that are authentic. It's not just a trend with
mm,
them. And then we can now properly identify who those organizations are and who we want to support as consumers, as employees, and, as investors, what have you, in
mm,
organizations.
mm. Well said. Dr. T, I have time for two more questions for you. How can storytelling and internal communication help sustain inclusion over time? And give me an example.
Yeah, I think that is a great question. A lot of times in organizations, especially those organizations that we've noticed not to be authentic when
Hmm.
it comes to DEI, they have a branding campaign around DEI and it is really externally facing,
Hmm.
right? But when you talk to the people in the organization, they say, oh, we don't feel that. We don't see that. That's not a part of what we do. So
Hmm.
organizations should have that external brand, but also that internal brand. And that's where storytelling comes in. When I worked at an organization called Paychecks. I don't know if you heard of it or not, but
Hmm.
working at Paychecks, I was able to create stories of people of different backgrounds because that helps you connect to the differences. Sometimes we only have one lens, and that's our experience and our background. But being able to hear some of the differences that people may have in their background and how that makes them show up in the workplace or allows them to show up in the workplace is so important. So I created a campaign internally that allowed those stories and voices to be shared. And it
Hmm.
was really, really pivotal for that organization in the work that they did around DEI, but really understanding differences.
Hmm.
So I think it's so important for organizations to share those differences, communicate within their organization, celebrate those differences, and then also create some systematic change around, yeah, these things are important and this is
Yeah.
what we're doing to address them.
Well said. And my last question for you. If you could redesign one aspect of workplace culture across industries, what would it be and why?
It would definitely be leadership. I
Hmm.
think that many leaders don't have the tools, or if they do have them, they're not implementing them and they're not being measured against those things in
Hmm.
order to really be a true leader. And being a true leader is about developing people, creating great experiences, not just driving results or the bottom line. So I
Hmm.
think getting leaders to really be empathetic leaders, to build effective teams, to build more leaders. I think that creating those types of competencies and implementing them and measuring them to actually have good leaders is something that I would change.
Hmm. And on that note, I just want to say what a fabulous conversation this has been. You took us through a lot of detail about HR I could see the amount of experience you have on DEI coming through in our conversation. Thank you also for speaking to me about your book, Inclusive Workplace Culture. Thank you again, and good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.